The 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing, by Ries and Jack Trout. Introduction. What's the name of the first person to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean? Go on, say it out loud. It's on the tip of your tongue. Charles Lindbergh, right? Of course. His name is etched into the pages of history. Now, here's the second question. What's the name of the second person to fly solo across the Atlantic? Silence. It's a much harder question, isn't it? For most of us, it's impossible. His name was Bert Hinkler. And here's the fascinating part. Bert was arguably a better pilot than Charles Lindbergh. He flew faster. He used less fuel. By every technical measure, his was a superior achievement. Yet, one man became a legend, and the other became a trivia question. Why? The answer to that question reveals a secret about how the world works. It's not just about history, it's about business, it's about success, and it's about you. It's the first clue to a set of powerful, invisible forces that shape our world, forces that two marketing legends, Ries and Jack Trout, dedicated their lives to understanding. In 1993, they published a slim, unassuming book called The 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing. It wasn't just another business book. It was a rule book. A set of principles as fundamental and unforgiving as the laws of physics. They argued that for decades, companies had wasted billions of dollars on brilliant, creative, well-funded marketing programs that were doomed to fail from the start. Why? Because they unknowingly broke these laws. Today, we're going to open up that rulebook. We're going to explore the invisible architecture of the marketplace. By the end of our time together, you won't just understand why we remember Lindbergh and forget Hinkler. You will hold a new lens through which to see the world, a lens that will help you understand why some ideas catch fire and change the world, while others, sometimes even better ideas, flicker and die. This is the secret playbook for making an impact, and it all begins with one profound and deeply counterintuitive truth. Book summary. Most people, and most companies, operate under a dangerous assumption. They believe the basic issue in marketing, which is really just the art of getting an idea to spread, is convincing people that you have a better product or a better service. They pour their energy into research, into development, into making the best thing. They get all their facts lined up, convinced that truth and quality will win the day. But Ries and Trout tell us this is an illusion. It's the single biggest mistake that leads to failure. Because marketing is not a battle of products. It's a battle of perceptions. Let that sink in for a moment. It's not about what is objectively true, it's about what people believe to be true. All that exists in the world of marketing are the perceptions living inside the minds of your customers. That is the only reality. Everything else is secondary. This is the bedrock upon which all the other laws are built. It's why the logical, natural way to market something is almost always wrong. You aren't fighting a product battle based in reality. You're fighting a perception battle inside a crowded, distractible, and stubborn human mind. This brings us back to Charles Lindbergh and Bert Hinkler. The first law, the law of leadership, states, "It's better to be first than it is to be better." It is so much easier to get into the mind first than it is to try and convince someone you have a better product than the one that's already there. The leading brand in any category is almost always the first brand that entered the prospect's mind. Think about it. Hertz in rental cars. IBM in computers. Coca-Cola in cola. Gillette in safety razors. Are they all the best? Does it even matter? They were first, and they staked a claim on a small piece of real estate in our collective consciousness. This is why, when a new category opens up, the first brand to enter the mind often becomes the generic name for the entire category. We don't ask for a facial tissue, we ask for a Kleenex. We don't ask for a bandage, we ask for a Band-Aid. We'll stand in front of a Canon copier and ask, how do I make a Xerox? The first brand to own the idea, owns the idea. But what if you can't be first? Is the game over? Are you doomed to be Bert Hinkler? Not at all. This is where the second law comes in. The law of the category. It says, if you can't be first in a category, set up a new category you can be first in. Remember our friend Bert Hinkler, the forgotten second man to fly the Atlantic? Well, what about the third person to fly solo across the Atlantic? You probably know her. Her name was Amelia Earhart. But is she remembered as the third person to fly the Atlantic? No. She is remembered as the first woman to do it. She created a new category. When IBM dominated the computer market, everyone else, the companies they called the Seven Dwarfs, tried to build a better mainframe computer. They failed. Then a company called Digital Equipment Corporation, or DEC, came along. They didn't build a better mainframe. They invented a new category, the minicomputer. They were first, and they became a giant. Later, others created new categories. The first workstation Sun Microsystems, the first fault-tolerant computer Tandem, the first personal computer sold over the phone Dell. When you're launching a new idea, the first question you should ask is not, how is this better than the competition? The question is, first what? In what category is this new thing the very first? Because people have their guard up when it comes to brands. Everyone is shouting about why their brand is better. But people have an open mind when it comes to categories. Everyone is interested in what's new. Few people are interested in what's better. These two laws, leadership and category, are powerful. But they point to an even more fundamental principle, the law of the mind. It's better to be first in the mind than to be first in the marketplace. Being first in the marketplace is only important because it gives you a head start on getting into the mind. Sometimes, the first product is a failure. There was a personal computer before the Apple II. It was called the MITS Altair 8800. Ever heard of it? Probably not. It was first to market, but Apple, with its simple name and clear message, was first to capture a meaningful place in the public's mind. The mind is the true battleground. And this is a battleground with very peculiar rules. The most important rule is this: you cannot change a mind once it's made up. Trying to do so is the single most wasteful thing you can do in marketing. Xerox was first in copiers. It was a brilliant, dominant company. Then, it decided to get into the computer business. It spent billions of dollars and decades of effort trying to change the public's mind. But in our minds, Xerox means copier. It never worked. Wang was first in word processors. But when the world moved to personal computers, Wang couldn't make the jump. In our minds, Wang meant word processor. The mind doesn't work like a computer, where you can just write over old data. The mind works more like a filing cabinet. Once a perception is filed away under a certain label, it's almost impossible to change that label. This is why you must blast your way into the mind, not gently worm your way in. First impressions are everything. So, how do you do that? How do you own a piece of that mental real estate? This leads us to one of the most powerful laws in the entire book, the law of focus. The most powerful concept in marketing is owning a word in the prospect's mind. Not a complicated word. Not an invented word. A simple word, taken right out of the dictionary. Federal Express became a giant because it owned one word, overnight. For years, if you absolutely, positively had to get it there overnight, you didn't just send a package, you FedExed it. They sacrificed everything else? They didn't do slow delivery. They didn't do large freight, to own that single word. Volvo owned safety. For decades, if you wanted the safest car for your family, the default choice was a Volvo. Crest owned cavities. Mercedes owned engineering. BMW owned driving. The leader in a category always owns a word. Often, it's the word for the category itself, like Coca-Cola owning cola, but if you're not the leader, you must narrow your focus. Prego took on the giant ragu in the spaghetti sauce market. They couldn't be the leader, so they chose to own a single attribute, thicker, and it worked. This is the ultimate sacrifice. You have to give something up to get something. And once you have your word, you have to protect it. You can't be all things to all people. You can't stand for safety one day and performance the next. The essence of marketing is narrowing the focus. You become stronger when you reduce the scope of your operations. This is connected to the law of exclusivity. Two companies cannot own the same word in the prospect's mind. When Volvo owns safety, it is futile for another car company to build its marketing around the idea of safety. All it does is reinforce Volvo's position. You are telling the customer, safety is important, and, by the way, the company that stands for safety is Volvo. Burger King learned this the hard way. A market study showed that the most important attribute for fast food was, unsurprisingly, fast. So, Burger King launched a massive campaign to position itself as the fast choice. The problem? McDonald's already owned the word fast in the public mind. The campaign was a disaster because it tried to attack the leader on its strongest point. This brings us to the dynamics of the marketplace itself. Once these positions are established in the mind, a predictable structure emerges. This is the law of the ladder. For each category, the mind creates a product ladder. On each rung, there is a brand name. In rental cars, Hertz is on the top rung. Avis is on the second. National is on the third. Your strategy depends entirely on which rung you occupy. For years, Avis advertised that it had the finest rental cars. Nobody believed them. How could they be the finest if they weren't number one? Then, they did something revolutionary. They acknowledged their position on the ladder. Their new campaign was, Avis is only no. 2 in rent-a-cars. So why go with us? We try harder. It was brilliant. For 13 years straight, Avis had lost money. The year they admitted they were number 2, they started making money. Lots of it. They succeeded not because they tried harder, but because they related themselves to Hertz, the leader already on the top rung of the ladder in the customer's mind. They embraced their position as the alternative to the leader. This points to a fascinating dynamic that plays out over time, described by the law of duality. In the long run, every market becomes a two-horse race. Early on, a category might have many rungs on its ladder. But gradually, it consolidates into a titanic struggle between two major players, the old, reliable leader and the upstart challenger. In batteries, it's Duracell and Energizer. In film, it was Kodak and Fuji. In sneakers, it's Nike and Reebok. In hamburgers, it's McDonald's and Burger King. And of course, in cola, it's Coke and Pepsi. In 1969, Coke outsold Pepsi by a huge margin, and a distant number 3 was Royal Crown Cola. The law of duality predicted that these market shares were unstable. The leader would lose some share, and the number 2 would gain, squeezing out number 3. And that's exactly what happened. Today, the cola market is a two-horse race, and Royal Crown is a footnote. In a maturing industry, third place is a very difficult position to be in. So, if you are that number 2, the challenger, what is your strategy? This is the law of the opposite. If you are shooting for second place, your strategy is determined by the leader. In strength, there is weakness. You must find the essence of the leader and present the prospect with the opposite. Don't try to be better, try to be different. Coca-Cola was the classic, the original, the established choice. It was the drink of the older generation. Pepsi brilliantly leveraged this strength and turned it into a weakness. They positioned themselves as the choice of the new generation, the Pepsi generation. If old people drank Coke and young people drank Pepsi, there was no room left for anyone else. Scope mouthwash did the same thing to Listerine. Listerine was the powerful, germ-killing mouthwash that tasted like medicine. Scope didn't try to be a better germ killer. They positioned themselves as the opposite, the good-tasting mouthwash. They hung the label medicine breath on their competitor, and it stuck. By presenting yourself as the alternative, you give a home to everyone who doesn't want to buy from the leader. But what happens when you're a successful company? The biggest danger you face comes from within. It's the irresistible temptation to violate the law of line extension. There's an irresistible pressure to extend the equity of the brand. This is, by far, the most violated law in marketing. A company has a successful product, let's say A1 steak sauce. It dominates its market. The thinking in the boardroom sounds so logical. People love A1. They trust our name. Now, people are eating less beef and more chicken. So, let's launch A1 poultry sauce. They'll know it's great because it has the A1 name on it. But it fails. Why? Because in the mind of the customer, A1 is not a brand name. It is steak sauce. You don't ask for A1 brand sauce, you ask for the A1. The name has become a stand-in for the category. Putting that name on a chicken sauce just confuses people and dilutes the power of the original brand. More is less. The more products you attach to a brand name, the less that name stands for in the mind of the consumer. IBM used to stand for mainframe computers. Today, it stands for everything, which means it stands for nothing. Volkswagen in America built its success on the small, quirky, reliable Beetle. It owned the small car position. Then, they decided to be like General Motors and sell bigger, faster, sportier cars, all under the Volkswagen name. People were confused. If a Volkswagen is a big, fast car, what does the name even mean anymore? The company lost its focus, and its market share collapsed. This leads to the law of sacrifice. You have to give up something in order to get something. This law is the direct opposite of line extension. If you want to be successful, you must reduce your product line, not expand it. You must sacrifice your target market. You must sacrifice constant change. Pepsi-Cola sacrificed the entire market except for the youth market. And in doing so, they captured the youth market and everyone who wanted to feel young. Marlboro cigarettes sacrificed the female market to focus exclusively on men, specifically the rugged cowboy. What happened? Marlboro became the #1 cigarette brand in the world, for both men and women. The target of your marketing is not always the market. You aim at a narrow target to create a powerful perception that appeals to a much broader market. The temptation is always to cast a wider net. But the wider the net, the more holes it has. True power comes from focus. Over time, this focus can seem threatened because categories themselves change. This is the law of division. Over time, a category will divide and become 2 or more categories. A category starts as a single thing, like computers. Then it divides into mainframes, minicomputers, personal computers, laptops, and notebooks. Each new segment has its own leader, which is rarely the leader of the original category. IBM led in mainframes, but DEC led in minis, and Apple led in PCs. The smart leader, like General Motors in its heyday, addresses each new category with a new brand name: Chevrolet, Pontiac, Oldsmobile, Buick, Cadillac. The foolish leader tries to use its existing name for everything. When Honda wanted to enter the luxury car market, they didn't call it the Honda Ultra. They created a new brand, with new dealerships and a new identity: Acura. They understood the law of division. This all points to a fundamental truth about time, captured in the law of perspective. Marketing effects take place over an extended period of time. Many marketing moves seem brilliant in the short term but are disastrous in the long term. A sale, for instance, increases business today. But in the long run, it teaches customers never to buy at the regular price. It cheapens the brand. Line extension is the perfect example. When Miller introduced Miller Lite, it was a brilliant concept, the first light beer. But they put the Miller name on it. In the short term, sales for both Miller High Life and Miller Lite boomed. But in the long term, the brand became confused. What was a Miller? The blue-collar Miller Time beer, or the yuppie light beer? The confusion eroded the core brand, and over the next decade, Miller High Life went into a terminal decline. The short-term gain led to long-term pain. And this reveals the final, humbling set of laws. The laws that remind us we are not in complete control. The law of unpredictability tells us that unless you write your competitors' plans, you can't predict the future. Most marketing plans are based on assumptions about the future that are usually wrong. You can't plan the future, but you can get a handle on trends. A fad is a wave in the ocean. It gets a lot of hype, but it comes and goes quickly. A trend is the tide, almost invisible, but immensely powerful over the long term. The law of acceleration says that successful programs are built on trends, not fads. The law of hype reminds us that the situation is often the opposite of the way it appears in the press. When a company is doing well, it doesn't need hype. When it needs hype, it's usually in trouble. Real revolutions don't arrive with marching bands and front-page stories, they sneak up on you. This leads to the law of success. Success often leads to arrogance, and arrogance to failure. When people become successful, they become less objective. They substitute their own judgment for what the market wants. They start to believe their name is the reason for their success, not the smart marketing moves they made. So they slap that name on everything, violating the law of line extension and planting the seeds of their own demise. And finally, there is the law of failure. Failure is to be expected and accepted. Too many companies try to fix things rather than drop things. A better strategy is to recognize failure early and cut your losses. The Japanese consensus model makes this easier. It's easier to say we were wrong than I was wrong. Admitting a mistake is the first step toward finding a new path. And to get on any path at all, you need one last thing. The law of resources. Without adequate funding, an idea won't get off the ground. Even the best idea in the world won't go far without the money to get it into the mind. An idea without money is almost worthless. You will get further with a mediocre idea and $1 million than with a brilliant idea and no money. Money is the fuel that makes the marketing engine run. These 22 laws, together, form a framework. They aren't just tips or tactics. They are the governing principles of the mental marketplace. And whether we know them or not, they are always at work, shaping the fate of ideas, companies, and careers. To violate them is to court failure. To understand them is to hold a map to making a lasting impact. Commentary. As we step back and look at these laws, what's truly remarkable is how timeless they feel. The book was written in the early 90s, a world before Google, before social media, before the idea that every individual has a personal brand. Yet, these principles feel more relevant today than ever before. In a world overflowing with noise, where anyone can broadcast a message to millions, the law of focus is no longer just a corporate strategy, it's a personal survival guide. The pressure to be everything to everyone, to have a perfect career, a perfect family, a thriving social life, a dozen hobbies, is immense. Ries and Trout's wisdom is a powerful antidote. You become stronger when you narrow your scope. What is the one word you want to own in the minds of the people who matter to you? Are you dependable? Creative? innovative? You can't own all of them. The act of choosing, of sacrificing, is the first step toward building a powerful reputation. The law of perception has also taken on new meaning. We live in an age of filtered realities and curated online personas. The line between objective reality and perception has never been blurrier. Understanding that the battle is won or lost in the mind, not in the world of facts and figures, is crucial. It explains why a simple emotional story can be more powerful than a mountain of data. It teaches us to communicate not just what is true, but what feels true to our audience. But for me, the most profound and challenging law is the law of sacrifice. It runs counter to our culture of more features, more followers, more choices. The book's simple but powerful message is that true success comes not from addition, but from subtraction. What are you willing to give up? What product line will you discontinue? What target market will you ignore? What part of your identity will you let go of to strengthen what remains? These are not easy questions. They require courage. They require a willingness to go against conventional wisdom. So, how can you start applying these ideas today? Let me offer a few simple thoughts. First, take a moment and think about a project you're working on, a goal you have, or even your own personal brand. Ask yourself, in what category am I trying to be first? If you're not first, what new category can you create where you can be first? Are you just another student trying to get into college, or are you the first student from your school to build a real app that solves a community problem? The shift in framing is everything. Second, try to define yourself or your project with a single word. What is the one attribute you want to own in the minds of others? This is an exercise in the law of focus. Write that word down. Put it on your wall. Let it guide your decisions. If your word is simplicity, then every feature you add to your product must be scrutinized. If your word is dependability, then every promise you make must be kept, without fail. Finally, embrace the law of candor. When you make a mistake, admit it. Acknowledge a weakness. It's disarming and builds trust faster than anything else. In a world full of people trying to project perfection, admitting a negative is a powerful way to earn a positive. I know my public speaking isn't the most polished, you might say, but I'm incredibly passionate about this topic. People will lean in, ready to hear what you have to say. The 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing is more than a book about business. It's a book about human psychology. It's about how ideas travel, how reputations are built, and how influence is earned. That was a summary of the 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing by Ries and Jack Trout. We've explored the core principles today, but I'll be honest with you, a summary can only ever be a map. The real adventure happens when you travel the territory yourself. The true power of this book lies in the stories and the subtle connections that you'll only discover by reading it. This summary is designed to help you decide if this journey is worth your time. If the idea of understanding the invisible rules that shape our world resonates with you, then I encourage you to pick up a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning marketing, it's about learning a new way to see. The link to the book is in the description. Also, if you found this summary valuable, please hit that like button and subscribe. We're building a community of curious minds here, and I don't want you to miss our next journey into another life-changing book. Let's keep growing together.